Hi, I'm Michael Killen. I have some exciting news. Michael Moore, the documentary producer, has announced he's bringing out a new documentary. And I think all of you know when Michael picks a topic, he's going to expose possibly a problem. We, the industry or whatever, is doing something and it's not the best thing for all of us. The name of the documentary is The Planet of the Humans, and I have learned it is about alternative energy, renewable energy, and I am really wondering how hard Michael Moore may hit the renewable energy marketplace and solutions. So I have invited two highly respected scientist engineers, Alex Cannara and Ripu Malhotra. I rely on both of these men all the time to give me the scientific, factual knowledge to help me do my job here. And I've invited them to help us discover and discuss what do you think Michael Moore is going to hit hard in his new documentary. Alex, always lovely to see you, and I have the greatest respect for Ripu. Will
always a pleasure, Michael. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. First of all, both of you, especially Alex, brought the news to me that Michael Moore was coming out with a documentary on renewable energy. And I think both of you, working with you over the years, the only thing we should talk about, but we'll talk about other things about energy, is how can it stop us from having an incredible disaster, and that's the impact of climate change on all of us. And do we all agree climate change is the most important goal of nuclear energy?
Well, the purpose of energy, clean energy, is to preserve the environment as we've come to know it and be able to survive in it. So we definitely are concerned with clean energy, whatever source.
Okay, and I want to ask, what has Michael Moore released about the content of his documentary?
What I know is that they were very surprised when they started work on the documentary. He and the other producer and the director, because they were thinking that they were going to learn all about the greenness of renewable energy. And what they found out was really how various moneyed interests and so forth have kind of exploited our misunderstandings about what's green energy and what's not. And so that's part of what the documentary is going to be exposing.
Okay. And when you say green energy, you're talking about manifestation of using solar primarily and wind primarily, right?
Yeah, the term green is really an unfortunate term. It certainly isn't a scientific term, but yes, that would be solar and wind.
So Michael Moore, you just alluded to, it's going to be, what he may be displaying for us, sharing with all of us, is how the rich fossil fuel industry has got themselves now tied in with the renewables. And at the end of the day, we believe we're not going to solve climate change, but we also, since the fossil fuel industry, they're going to slow us down, and at the same time, they're going to make money. But Ripu, give us your opinion on this.
So I haven't seen the movie. I don't think any of us has seen the documentary yet. But based on the reports that they have sent out and the articles in the media, that's right that they are going to be looking at the moneyed interests in it. That's one aspect. The other aspect is the inability of the renewables to scale to the level that is needed. An important thing to remember is that we need energy. We can't live without energy. And we need lots and lots of energy, and half the world population is still without. Our current practice of producing energy is what's contributing to the climate change. And there has been, the attraction of green energy, the renewables, is that they can give us the energy without emitting carbon dioxide. That's the attraction to it. And people have bought into it hook, line, and sinker entirely. When you look at it overall, I said this is really, this is all the biggest hurdle for renewables is that they all wind, solar, biofuels, they're very dilute. And when they're dilute, they require a lot of space, they require a lot of materials, they require a lot of costs, and they are not environmentally benign.
When you say diluted, in other words, over a certain area, whatever the area is, this much, or cornfield, whatever, you can have all the electronics out there from this collecting energy from the sun, but at the end of the day,
Right.
the intensity
It's
you're
the
getting
intensity of
is
sunlight here. It's only at the peak, it's about a kilowatt per square meter. You know, that's all there is.
Okay.
And what we need, what the world needs, and if you look at the world's population and where we are growing, we look at how much. And for years, I've been hearing, oh, the renewables are on a steep increase.
Okay. I'd just like to get clear on one point for us. It's a fact that Michael Moore's documentary will at the least be covering the business interactions between the fossil fuel and the emerging renewables, okay? Do you think he is going to also say the emperor does not have any clothes, in that the fossil fuels, the renewable energies at the end of the day are just not suited to meet the needs, the energy needs of the world?
Yeah,
And
well,
if that's the case,
right.
give us one reason
Right.
why the renewables are not able to deliver what we'd all like them. One good one.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, energy to us is useful because we can depend on it. Well, the sun goes down every day everywhere on the earth, and the wind doesn't blow full steam every minute of every day either. So you have to build a system that's going to be reliable, then that means you're going to have to add something else. And so one of the things that's interesting now is that some of the fossil fuel companies are actually exposing their interest in our misunderstanding of what renewable energy is. BP, for instance, has ads on TV and in magazines now showing some nice family living in a windy area with the windmills going around, and then of course the wind stops and they want to have their lights on at night, and they're burning gas, and they're burning BP's gas. So this is something that we actually can see happening in the industry, where the fossil fuel industry is in fact investing in things like wind and solar, getting a production tax credit from us, the taxpayer, to produce that wind and solar power, and getting a depletion allowance from extracting gas from wells and selling it. So we have this problem of understanding what's really going on, and the thing that I think is really critical is that everybody needs to sit down and think, what do I understand the word utility to mean? And that's the thing. A utility is something that's useful all the time.
I think you brought up a lot of good points. I want to try to paraphrase you. Nail me if I make any extent. You're saying BP, for example, what it is doing now, it's promoting renewable energy solutions like wind and solar. But we all know that that kind of energy solution doesn't have the intensity, the scalability that we really need. But us consumers and businesses, we buy into what BP is saying, yes, so we get a lot of solar and wind investments. But then at the end of the day, we're really using more fossil fuel by burning gas that BP would provide us. And that, what does that gas do? It contributes to possibly the end of civilization, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the plan, BP has published their own plans for what they think they'll be selling in terms of oil and gas in the future. And if you add them all up, what they and other combustion folks will be selling, it means that they're over 50% of our energy, they think, should be coming from gas and oil and coal still.
Yeah. We want to add on this Ripu?
So, yes, those they are feeble. I want to say that the renewables have been, people promoting renewables have been reminding us, those of us who were pointing out that it's very feeble, that it's not going to scale for years. They've been being on me and others like me, that we don't understand the exponential growth that they are undertaking, and that there's wonderful growth that they are going. They'll soon be so large that we won't need any other sources of energy. And it is true, if you can scale it up to that, you can, great, you could do it. But let me show you a graph. This is the historic data for the last 25 years. We've been talking about BP a lot.
Good. So this will be the growth of different energy sources over the last 25 years.
Yes.
And we'll have a chance to see that exponential growth of...
Right, what this wonderful growth that you're seeing. And you will see that, yes, it has grown more than 10 times or something. The little sliver line for the renewables that's growing on in here is, has widened. But even today, it's barely 4% of the total energy that the world consumes. And we use a gobble of energy. You know, it's about 4 cubic miles of oil. On this graph, it is not in cubic miles. It's the one made by BP. BP has been doing a fantastic service in providing very thorough and very good information on energy use over the decades. And it's, they use 1 million ton of oil equivalent, so those are their units. But it's there, and you will see that it's minuscule. And we are running out of time. We are running out of time. We need to stop climate change soon, and we need to focus on technologies that can deliver.
And political leaders around the world
they've been seduced by. People have been seduced by the promise of renewables.
Right. We have a chart that we can actually put up that shows the World Bank reported a Swedish study, and we have the graphic for that we can put up that shows how countries can either meet or fail to meet the IPCC targets for like 2100. And on the right-hand portion of that graphic, you can see countries have already met the targets or have exceeded them, and those are the ones with nuclear power. The ones on the left part of the chart are failing and will likely never be able to meet the requirements using renewables because they've chosen what they think is clean, but unfortunately, which is what Ripu is talking about, a source of energy that's going to use a lot of materials per kilowatt hour that they actually get.
I'm wondering if my staff would give me a signal. Were you able to bring up that excellent slide? We got it. And I want to summarize what I think you said in it. Those countries that are betting on renewable energy to help them go forward and attain a goal of helping to stop climate change, because it means a lot to them, all of us, to do that, they're the ones who will have the most difficult time making a significant contribution to stopping climate change and meeting their own country's energy.
Right.
But those that are taking other approaches, and maybe you can help me understand the other approaches that some of the other countries are taking.
Right. Well, France and Sweden have exceeded the targets already because they are dominantly nuclear powered. Other countries like Taiwan and South Korea have also large amounts of nuclear power, so they're doing quite well. And the key there is that, and the United States could as well, because it's how far you have to move your clean power up to meet the target that the IPCC has set. If we don't know exactly how accurate that target is, but nonetheless, we don't have that far to go for the United States. But Germany, for instance, has a very long way to go because they've unfortunately made a bet that they could install wind and solar, even in Germany, and still burn their coal. And in fact, they're planning to burn more coal as time goes on, so as well as gas. So we have a problem in getting through to the leadership of some countries what is actually the best policy to take.
Okay. Well, I think some people could argue with you, Alex and Ripu, that look, we have to create jobs for the voters. So we can create millions and millions of jobs for these solar panels and these wind terminals. And isn't it cheap to go out and get the materials that are needed to do this? What do you have to say about that?
Well, Ripu has that graph of on his tablet, and we have a version of it that the Department of Energy produced, and it shows that it takes 10 times as many tons of raw materials to build a gigawatt capable power plant from wind as it does from nuclear. And it takes 16 times as much raw material to process and the pollution associated with that to build a solar farms that have the same capacity as a nuclear plant.
So let me add a little bit to this. I don't know what the IPCC target was, to how far you have to go.
For the 2 degree.
For the 2 degree
Yeah.
kind of thing. But I'm looking at the global energy demand. Let's say for 9 billion people by the middle of this, we're already 7.5 billion people on the planet.
Right.
To provide adequate energy, I need to be producing 110,000 terawatt hours, or something like 8 cubic miles of oil energy is what I need. 8 cubic miles of oil, we're about half, so we have to double our total energy. And if you want to remove all the fossil energy, which were about 80% in that big graph, you saw from coal and oil and gas, with something that is non-polluting, then so many terawatt hours, I have a number for that. And that's 110,000 terawatt hour per year. That's the number. And I look at it on this slide that you are showing, look at the numbers of materials that are, tons that are needed, of materials like concrete, steel, glass, aluminum, copper. These are commodity materials. And you say, okay, if I want to be producing this much, what is my global supply? How does it relate to the global supply? And you find that, oh my God, this is consuming almost all of the global supply, and sometimes even more than that. So expanding it to meet the global demand of energy by renewables would require you to increase the mining and all that and the associated damage to the environment several times. And that's the other challenge. That's the other problem that they have, and no one talks about.
Yeah, well,
I like to say that, and this comes of, we touched on the intermittency problem earlier. And people say, oh, we're going to solar with batteries, but batteries not included should be a tagline. They should add to all their wind and solar batteries now, because all the cost estimates, et cetera, are batteries not included. And if you add the materials for the batteries, the problem is even worse.
Right, and then people don't understand, the average person doesn't understand when the solar guy comes to sell them solar in maybe a battery, that you have to be able to charge the battery. I mean, batteries don't charge themselves. So you have solar on the house to run your house during the day, but the battery's not going to get charged because you're using most of that power. So you have to buy more solar and hopefully have enough space on your roof to put it all up to charge the battery, so you'll have something in the evening. That's the kind of thing that's going on that makes it very difficult. And the interesting thing from what Ripu is saying, the World Bank studied more than just that Swedish study that I was talking about, and says that we would have to at least triple the amount of mining and refining and processing of raw materials in the world to try to depend upon wind and solar as our primary energy sources. So that, can you imagine tripling the mining activity around the world, even if we buy Greenland? What's the pollution going to be? What's going to happen to the world markets? The pricing of copper, if we're tripling our demand for copper simply to build out some wind farms everywhere we can, it doesn't make any sense economically as well as scientifically. So the problem to keep in mind is the purpose of clean energy is to be a utility grade product, just like water and sewer and fire departments and police departments are utility grade. We get to use them all but maybe a few minutes a year. And we don't want to kill our planet. We want
Yes.
clean energy.
Can I pick up on something both of you said, the intermittent quality? And then I sort of thought a fair amount of the discussion had to do with the energy needs, like in my home, okay? You know, maybe we have some wind and some solar, but I recognize it's intermittent. When the wind stops, there's no energy coming from the windmill, and when the solar comes down. But you know, most days between the wind and the sun, my house gets enough energy, I think. But there's another big customer, the utilities. The trend now is to force the utilities, and the force will get stronger every year, to get them to stop burning coal. And the pressure is on to keep them from replacing it with gas. And some people will then say, because their minds are a little like this, the only thing they can replace it with then is renewable energy. But then you and Alex and thousands of other experts say, wait a second, the utilities need utility-grade energy sources so that they can give us utility. Either one of you want to say anything more on that topic?
That's why nuclear power is basically battery power, because it's available 24/7. Every few years you have to reshuffle the core uranium fuel, but the plant's down for maybe 10% of that year. The point is that you can depend upon nuclear power because that was intended for. And in 1962, President Kennedy was questioning, how are we going to guarantee energy to the United States into the future? This is 1962. And he set up a commission, and the commission ground through the data, and it came back and said nuclear power. So we started building nuclear power plants. We obviously have competition, direct competition from nuclear with the combustion industry, which they don't like, and they have lobbyists, and those lobbyists work their magic in Washington. And so we never actually built enough nuclear plants to do the job for us. But France did because they didn't want to have to fight the OPEC oil embargo year after year. Sweden has. Japan depends on nuclear, even though that we had the Fukushima accident. Their plants are coming back on gradually. So it's just a matter of common sense that if you have a reliable 24/7 source of energy and it's clean, hey, that's what we should be using.
You want to say something?
Yes. The challenge of intermittency and all, what you end up doing if you're relying on intermittent sources is you have to just put a lot of them, because each one is producing, let's say, about 15, 20, or 20 to 30% of the time. I build them about 5 times or 3 times the size of what is needed. What I'm left with are a lot of stranded assets.
Right.
A lot of stranded assets. Certainly finds employment to people. Of course, now stranded assets would normally mean that the cost would be very high. And what my friends who are promoting renewables always remind me of is, Ripu, look at it, the price of solar and wind is coming down. The purchase power agreements are coming down at so low price. And this is a distraction, or a little bit a kind of a funny thing, because if we just look at the price that we're paying, you say, well, if it's cheapest one, what's the harm? I'll just build more of it. Why don't I do it that way? And it comes down to the fact that this is the price, it's not the cost.
Right.
And it's worth distinguishing the two. The renewables, the way we have structured the market, they are given many other streams of income, so that the price of electricity that they produce and they charge you is a very small part of their own revenue. And so they can afford to sell it sometimes for negative or for so very little cost.
Right.
because they don't care. The production tax credit, the investment tax credit, the deferments for state and local taxes, the curtailment streams. These are different things, the ways that the markets have been structured. We don't have time to go into all of them today. But it's worth examining, and so that's why the price is coming down. The cost is not.
Right.
All right. Very, very interesting. We don't have much time left. So a big question is, how far might Michael Moore go in reporting on the development of the renewable energy solutions and the marketplace? Will he just go and point out of the industry ties that are being formed by the fossil fuel industry and the renewable industry to make sure the fossil fuel industry continues to emit more greenhouse gases? Will he go as far as saying what the real purpose of renewable energy has to be, and that is to save us from a disaster of climate change?
Right, right.
And is he going to bring up what both of you brought up of how much energy, minings, etc., is required? It should be interesting. He could destroy the renewable and hurt the sales, the stock, etc. My guests have been Alex Cannara and Ripu Malhotra. Both of them are respected around the world for their knowledge about the larger developments in various types of energy, everything from renewable all the way up to probably the only energy source that's going to save civilization, and that's the nuclear energy. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the Media Center in Palo Alto, California. Thank you very much.